Hello everyone, it is that time of year again. I'm Darkside Phil, and welcome to my year-end series covering the events of 2025. So the new year is already upon us, but I'm still stuck down here in the pits of disappointment. Because ladies and gentlemen, 2025 was a year when, at least for me, it was just rife with disappointments. When you look at the landscape of games in the modern era, I think a lot of things have changed compared to the old days. And what I mean by that is, you used to have these tried and true companies that would put out amazing top-tier games, and you knew that you could trust them. Whether it was a ginormous company that has a humongous history like Nintendo, or a huge game publisher that could do a variety of stuff like Ubisoft, or BioWare, or Bethesda. You used to have your big heavy hitters, and you knew that every year you could trust them to put out quality games. It seems that in the modern day, that's just not the case anymore, and most of the great games of last year were pretty much from small-time, AA, or either indie developers, and the big boys kind of fell flat on their own faces. What we're about to do is walk through a list of 16 games which I played in 2025 that I found disappointing for one reason or another. Now, I want you to understand, this is not a listing of the worst games of 2025. Although a lot of these games you will see are pretty bad, that's really not the goal of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to basically show you reasons why certain games were disappointing. Maybe there was a game that actually was decent, but just didn't live up to the expectations that people had for it. Maybe there was a game that I actually enjoyed, but it just didn't work out as a playthrough. It really disappointed me. Or maybe the game sucked. So we're going to take a look at all these different situations and my personal rundown of the most disappointing games of last year. However, I just want you to know they're not in any particular order, except for number one. All these games were disappointing, and I don't want to rank them really at, what was the saddest or biggest disappointment? But there was one game last year that actually significantly pissed me off. And that one I will leave for last. Okay? All right, everybody. So, by the way, I already explained this to my audience, but this is going to be an interactive stream, meaning if people want to talk to me about the selections, if there's contributions, I will be speaking with them and shouting them out. There may be some back and forth between myself and my audience, all right? But the first game that I want to talk about is a game that I don't think anyone is going to question or think, gee, I wonder why Phil has this one on his list. This game, interestingly enough, was made by a former game developer who used to work for Rockstar. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the game that we're about to talk about is Mind's Eye. And for those who don't remember, and by the way, pay no attention to the man standing behind me. For those who don't remember, Mind's Eye was a game that was actually heavily hyped, that it may be the new game to take over for Grand Theft Auto. It's going to be an open world adventure featuring technology and mystery and all kinds of fun gameplay elements. And then the game actually came out. And when it did, what we all found out is that Mind's Eye was an atrocious mess. The game itself was not polished in any way whatsoever. It had huge physics problems. It had tons of boring, repetitive gameplay. It had NPCs doing some kind of weird slide across the floor like they were Iceman from X-Men. Cars disappearing. Things exploding, launching into the air. The game was obviously completely and utterly unfinished. It made no sense that they even released it. And by the way, this is a full retail release game. This one was sold for like $60, $70 plus tax. This is not, this is an indie game that was sold for a discounted rate. I mean, take a look at the physics here. Just clobbering a giant truck and the thing flies like it's made of paper mache. And then it disappears from the game world entirely. And this game was rife with these problems. But not only was that one bad for those reasons, the game itself was just a pathetic mess. Like, there was nothing really interesting about it. The writing itself was bad. The plot was very generic and not interesting. And probably to make matters even worse, a game that is supposed to kind of be like GTA, but basically this game didn't have anything going on in the world at all. Like, what's one of the things that you would say about Grand Theft Auto is very interesting. Well, the world, it's vibrant, it's alive, it feels like there's stuff going on at any moment that makes you, look at that, that makes you interesting, right? There's all side quests, there's gang activity that can happen. In this game, as you drive around, there's literally nothing happening in the game at all at any time. Like, the world is so boring, people fusing into cars like that, but there's just nothing actually happening. It's just a very empty, broken, unfinished game with a world that's not engaging at all. And the fact that they tried to charge full price for it, most people saw right through it. Now, I bought it just on curiosity's sake, and man, we only got like maybe 4 or 5 hours in, and it was just, I've had enough. Like, there's no point to even play this. There was actually an entire stealth mission based on sneaking into like a prison, getting an item and getting out. It was one of the most boring things I'd ever done in my life, and I gave up. So, Mind's Eye, a very, very good example of a game that really didn't live up at all to any of the hyper expectations that have been played out for it. If anything, what this proves is that just because someone who worked on a game actually worked at a game studio that was prominent does not mean in any way, shape, or form that the game is going to be good. Yeah, they had the idea of what an open world sandbox game should be, but it doesn't mean that the one that they make is going to be a good one. And yeah, it was a huge, huge waste of money and a ripoff. So, that's our first entry in the most disappointing games countdown. Moving on to the next. Our next game was a game actually made by a well-respected game developer. This is a developer that actually in the past had made quite a lot of great games and was kind of like resting on those laurels, looking down memory lane and saying, hey, look at what we did in the past. Here's our next new offering. Come out and check it out. So I did. And when I did, there was actually a lot of things about the game that I enjoyed. But at the same time, there was one glaring, really huge flaw. Ladies and gentlemen, next on my list, the most disappointing games of 2025 countdown. Oh, someone already guessed it. You guessed it. Avowed. So, Avowed is made by Obsidian. Obsidian is the studio that made Fallout New Vegas, one of the most highly respected games that has ever, come out, and we still wish that there would be another one, right? Sadly, Bethesda's doing pretty much nothing with Fallout besides making a TV series right now, which is great, by the way, but we want more Fallout. Well, Obsidian needs something else to do, so they decided to make their own open-world fantasy game in the style of, say, The Elder Scrolls. And as you can see, at face value, the game doesn't look half bad, does it? The graphics are pretty good, the movement, the gameplay elements, the leveling system. In fact, I would argue that if you just play Avowed and explore, you're actually going to have quite a lot of fun, because I did, just kind of messing around in the world. I played this game for, I want to say around 12 hours, and I pretty much ignored the story, and I just ran around the open world and messed around with exploration and the like. And every time that I did that, I actually had quite a lot of fun. The open world itself is well designed, looks really good, and just in general is a great time to kind of mess around in. All right. So then wherein lies the problem? Well, the problem with Avowed is that there's a story. And every time that you try to delve into the story of Avowed, you'll find out that basically this studio probably doesn't employ the people who wrote Fallout New Vegas anymore. In fact, they probably don't employ anyone who knows how to write. Because the story of Avowed is one of the most boring, uninteresting, confusing, and just not special things that I've ever seen in an open world RPG. Every time that there's dialogue, every time that there's a development in the story, it's like, what is going on? There's this ethereal voice talking to you and make a choice. Does the choice even matter? Doesn't really matter. And then you got to do a lot of menial tasks in order to advance to the next part of the story. And so the sad part about this game is that it's not a bad game. Like I said, not every game that I'm going to have in this countdown is a terrible game. The world design itself is actually quite good. There's some good things about Avowed by playing that I enjoyed. But the story itself is so dang boring that you don't really want to go back to it when you're forced to do it. And that's the thing about any open world RPG, right? You got to do the story at some point. You can't just ignore and put off the story endlessly. You got to get back to it. And every time you do, you're like, oh my God, I wish I could just explore the world some more. So after about maybe 12, 13 hours of the game, I was like, I just don't want to play this. I'm bored. The story is not good. And I wish that basically they employed better writers, but they don't. So sadly, that's the story of Avowed. It's just a game that doesn't live up to the hype or expectations of anything that Obsidian has ever put out. It's boring to play once you have to get into any kind of dialogue or story. It's just completely uninspired. I wish maybe it was kind of just, Elder Scrolls. In fact, rumor has it, this actually was supposed to be an Elder Scrolls game, but they were outright told by their parent company, Bethesda, no, this can't actually have the Elder Scrolls stuff in it. We're not going to give you the IP. So they just turned it into its own thing. And that's basically why it sucked. Now, if you like exploration and side questing, I actually recommend it. But I'm just going to warn you, whenever you get to the story, you're going to be terribly bored. I was, and pretty much everyone who played this game was. That's the major problem with the game. All right. That one was a sad one. The good news about Avowed is that it's a Game Pass game. And like some of the games this year that really stunk, at least if a game is going to be bad, if it's a Game Pass game, then at least you're not like dropping money on it, right? And I think maybe in 2025, this was the year when Game Pass for some people was a big, big advantage. Because if you don't have to buy the game outright and it sucks, you didn't really lose anything, right? So a lot of these games I tried were Game Pass things that, I didn't really, invest too much. So it's not a big deal that it sucked. But at the same time, yeah, it's disappointing when you get a game company like Obsidian that's done good things before and they just don't know what they're doing anymore. Like, it seems like they've lost their way and the people who used to be good at the company don't work there anymore. All right. Continuing on. The next game on my countdown. Wow. Once again, this style of game I have played in the past and I've been able to turn, how can I say, coal into diamonds. I've been able to make a game that maybe other people found boring, very entertaining through my commentary. Ladies and gentlemen, this game was one that even I couldn't save in any way, shape, or form. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, and you're probably better off for it. The game that I'm about to tell you about, in my opinion, isn't anyone's good use of time, and if you skipped it last year, be thankful. Ladies and gentlemen, the game next on my countdown of most disappointing games is Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. So, the whole narrative-based choose-your-own-adventure style game is something that I've done in the past. Life is Strange, particularly, is one of the series that I've been able to make some good content out of. This particular game, I feel, took it way too far. So, Lost Records, Bloom and Rage is a game that follows 4 teenage girls from all different walks of life who meet each other during this one summertime, and they team up to have kind of almost misadventures. Now, the game's premise is that you're in the future, and these girls have grown up, but they've forgotten actually what happened in the past. They can't particularly actually remember what happened during this particular summer. So they're kind of having like flashback memories and trying to figure out what happened, okay? On the surface, that sounds interesting, doesn't it? Oh, maybe they ran into something crazy, supernatural, or, was it horror themed or something? And the game keeps endlessly teasing at something like that. As you can see, one of the characters has a video camera where she's documenting things with the camera. And that's one of the main gameplay elements of the game, is that you're trying to document as much as you possibly can while investigating what actually happened that summer. The problem is, this game is a huge bait and switch. While it sounds on the surface like it's really good, in reality, it's all just faked. It's just girls who kind of are angsty, and there's entire scenes based around these girls basically doing things. You'd be like, these are teenage girls. Why would they be acting like this? Why would they be doing these risky things? You know what I'm saying? And the writing itself is incredibly cringy. It's written, again, it sounds like the people who wrote the game are trying to either relive a youth that they never lived, meaning they wish this is how their youth was, but it really wasn't. Or they just read a whole bunch of like teen books, novels, and they tried to regurgitate it into like game form. What I'm trying to say is the writing's atrocious. Like, none of the characters are very likable. They're doing risky things teenage girls should never do. And then they're lauded as like heroes in the story. It's like, but they're not. Like, they're actually doing horrible things. Like, if I wouldn't want my teenage daughter watching this game and be like, oh, I want to do that stuff. No, you wouldn't. It's actually very bad. It's not good role model content. It's really bad stuff. But that's how they present it in the game, which is ridiculous, okay? But to make matters even worse, at the very end, and I don't want to spoil the game for anyone who decides to actually play it, but basically at the very end of the first episode, because there are 2 episodes in this game, there is the most lame, over-the-top, just awful writing. All I'm going to say is one of the girls ends up having a condition, and they throw it at you at the last minute, and you're like, what? Like, why is this part of the game? This is awful that they thought that this would be a spin or a twist. It's just not well written at all. It's actually quite embarrassing, in my opinion. It feels like I said, the writers of the game are probably adults who wish that this was their youth and it wasn't, and they were trying to relive their angsty adventures. It's just bad. And this is a game that was so bad, I never played episode 2. Like, I barely stomached episode 1. I could barely get through it. And then when episode 2 released, I was like, I'm not playing this. I can't stand it. It's so poorly made and so poorly written. I cannot stomach another 10 hours of this garbage slop that really shouldn't exist. You know, that's probably the best way to explain it. Like, there are some games that are made for entertainment, and there's some games that are made and they tell an interesting story. This is a game that does neither, and is just so badly made that I don't think that it should exist. Like, probably gaming would have been better if it was never made. But of course, you're going to have people who are going to be like, oh, well, don't you know that this is important because it's a game for teen girls? No, it's not. Like I said, the girls in this game are not role models at all. They actually make horrible decisions. They take risks they shouldn't take. I wouldn't want anyone, you know, playing this game and thinking this is how teens should act. It's actually the opposite. This is like an instruction manual of what not to do. So, yeah, the game sucks. I couldn't even play the second half because I couldn't stomach it. And if you even give it a look, I'm just going to warn you, you're going to feel like you wasted a whole lot of your time. All right. So, we're only 3 in. I know it feels like we're like 10 in, but we're only 3 games in. Okay. Up next, we have a game that, sadly, is another example of a company that completely fell off. And when I say that, you might say, I don't know what you mean. Because these AAA game companies are coming out with great games and they keep reporting that they're doing well. The game I'm about to show you in the countdown for the most disappointing games of 2025 is a game that right now the actual publisher is insisting did well, even though it definitely didn't, okay? They won't report actual sales numbers, but they keep saying the franchise is healthy and alive. They keep saying that this is one of our big poster child kind of things, our big IPs, and every time we're proud of the game. And the actual CEO of the company who made this game actually said, well, we just made a game for gamers, and I don't think that's what people are looking for anymore. Excuse me? You're the CEO of a gaming company, and you think that gamers aren't looking for games for gamers? Then what are they looking for? Anyway, let's just get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a game that I don't think anyone is going to be shocked is on this listing whatsoever. From early 2025, it's Assassin's Creed Shadows. So, Assassin's Creed Shadows, right from the get-go, already had massive controversy around it because it stars a female ninja, out of which there were probably one ever in history, if ever there was one, and it stars a African samurai. That's correct. Someone of darker skin who is apparently a samurai. And immediately people called this out before the game even came out and said, if you're going to finally have an Assassin's Creed set in Japan, why do you have 2 protagonists that aren't even stereotypical people from Japan? Like, they're the outliers. They're the exception to the rule. We've been waiting so long for Assassin's Creed to be in Japan. Why not actually have a game that's representative of what would happen in Japan? So, right from the get-go, there was a huge misstep when they made the game. But for me, to be honest with all of you, when I actually bought and played the game, I never even got that far. You might say, well, what do you mean? What you're seeing here is representative of the first 12 hours of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Because in the intro, you only play as Yasuke, the Black Samurai, for about 20 minutes. It goes a little bit of his intro cutscenes, but you never actually really play as him in his story. It just goes right to the female ninja. You're then forced to play her story almost tirelessly and endlessly for about 15 plus hours before the game goes back to Yasuke. And as you can see, this is the gameplay of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Essentially, you go through towns, killing endless amounts of enemies. All you do is sneak around and murder people, grab resources, and take over bases. That's the game. All right? Assassin's Creed used to be, hey, you're an assassin, sneak into town, be very stealthy, go in like a shadow, and kill someone and get out undetected. Bonus points if you're undetected and if you don't actually kill anyone along the way besides your target, right? Now, the game is literally infiltrate a base, become a one-man army, murder as many people as possible, in fact, get rewarded for the more murders you commit, and loot and get out. How is that Assassin's Creed? Like, it's not at all. In any way is that anything to do with Assassin's Creed. What they did is they almost double and triple down on the formula of games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Valhalla and said, open world's the way to go now. Just make it an endless grind of going through these areas and killing as many as you can and taking over as much as you can. It doesn't make any sense. You're not meant to be a one-man army if you're an assassin. That's not even what the word assassin means. So what were they going for with this game? Basically nothing to do with anything that people wanted with Assassin's Creed. In fact, it actually was confusing because the last Assassin's Creed game was a return to form. If you remember, they had a game that was more small scale, only about 20 hours long, and you again were in smaller towns doing single assassinations, and that made a heck of a lot of sense. This game, going back to the open world formula, sneaking in this giant world and just killing as many as you possibly can, doesn't even make sense for the series, okay? After about 10 hours, what happened was the game forced you to get these resources to continue. I'm not kidding. You had a base, and in this home base, you had to grind for resources as if it was like an MMORPG or something. And so you had to keep going back and killing people and trying to loot to get the resources. It was the most boring thing ever in Assassin's Creed. And basically around 15 hours, I said, I'm not playing this anymore. Like, I'm just not having any fun. This isn't what the game's supposed to be. The story, by the way, is very boring. The game takes way too long to go from part to part. The best comparison I can give would be Mafia 3. If you remember in Mafia 3, that was a game that if the story kept moving, it would have been over in 20 hours, but would have been an amazing game. But the game kept padding itself and forcing you to do base takeovers in order to get to the next leg of the story. That's literally what they did with this game 10 years later. It's a game where if you just didn't have to do the grinding, it would probably be fun. But instead, you were so forced to do this repetitive combat and takeovers. It's just not anything interesting at all. I better things to do with my time than do repetitious nonsense over and over. So Assassin's Creed Shadows did poorly. For those who don't know, it actually was a flop for Ubisoft. The game did not sell nearly as well as they had intended for the amount of money and time they put into its development. And then the CEO went on a PR campaign basically saying, well, it's because of people who complained on the internet about the protagonist rather than caring about the game and its elements. It's a game for gamers, and the gamers didn't care because of all the stuff online. No, the gamers didn't care because your game sucks. You've lost your way as a game developer. You're no longer making games for gamers. That's why gamers don't like it. It has nothing to do with the fact that people made us stink that the protagonists aren't in line with what probably was happening during this era in Japanese history. It has to do with the fact that the game is fucking boring. No one wants to play another open world Assassin's Creed where we have to waste 10 hours, 20 hours before we get to the next leg of interesting story. You're an idiot. Yves Guillemot. All right. So what's a shame about that series is that Assassin's Creed has been one of my favorite game series over the years that I've been a YouTuber, but they have gone so far off the deep end that quite honestly, I don't know if they can ever recover at this point. Like, seriously, I just don't know if there's anything that Assassin's Creed can do that people are going to care about the series again. Like, I don't even know. Like, there was actually a story that they were in development making a game. Listen to this. It was going to be set in the days of slavery. and you were going to be like an escaped slave that becomes an assassin, and you were going to fight against like the slave owner, plantation owners. And you might say, oh, well, that's a woke story. No, I actually think that's a good story. Like, that story would have been way better than what they did with Assassin's Creed Shadows. But guess what happened? Assassin's Creed Shadows was coming out and was getting all this flack for the protagonist being black, even though there were no real black samurai, and the other protagonist is a female ninja. And guess what they did? They canceled it. They actually canceled the game and said, we can't make this game in this current climate. No, you can. It just has to be good. All you have to do is make a good game, and people will dig your story. Just make a good game. But instead, they go for this kind of agenda-first attitude, and it flops. That's why Assassin's Creed Shadows flops, because no one cared about the game by the time it came out, and then on top of it, the game was bad. They don't get that, though. They really don't understand. All right, so let's continue. Ladies and gentlemen, there was an interesting game, at least I thought it would be interesting, that came out in 2024. This was a game that really was not in my wheelhouse of a game that I normally would play. All right, but people said, hey, you're a PC gamer now. Will you check out more variety of games and different stuff? And I said, sure, I will. Let's check it out. Let's see what this game is all about. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I checked out a game that was not in my comfort zone whatsoever. You may remember it, you may not. It was called Inzoi. And as you can see here, I had a great time playing it wearing my gunner glasses, or actually my aviator glasses. I don't know why I wore those during this particular day. But Inzoi was a game that everyone was touting as the modern Sims. This game, you can make a virtual version of yourself, and you could go around town doing stuff like hanging out with other Inzoi characters. You can eat, you can drink, you could do activities, you can get a job and work. You could do all of these things, okay? And when I played the game, I didn't really know what to expect. And at first, I actually was having a lot of fun with this game. The initial, character creation, setting up personality traits, interacting with certain people in town, and going and buying food, and, checking out what's available in the area. It's pretty good, to be honest. And the graphics, actually, for a Sim-style game like this, are actually pretty outstanding. You take a look, I think the game actually looks quite good. But the further I got into Inzoi, of the 2 or 3 streams that I did of it, the cracks started to show. For example, I got a job, and then I got in a taxi to go to the job, and this is what happened. Literally, the taxi froze in place, and I was like, what's going on? Why is nothing happening? Why can't I do anything? So come to find out, in the game, half the jobs weren't done. They had sold the game, but half the jobs hadn't been put into it yet. So if you chose an occupation that didn't exist in the game, you would get into a car to go to work and sit in the car all day. Then you would leave the car and earn money for sitting in the car all day. Now, it is my understanding that you were supposed to actually have the job in there and you would do tasks at the job, but they didn't have that in the game yet. Okay? So similarly to this, as I continued to play and do certain things in the game, other things were unfinished. For example, I found out if you go to the theme park, half the rides don't work. Wait, what? So half the jobs aren't in the game, half the rides don't work. What else is unfinished in this game? Well, come to find out, actually, the game is mostly unfinished, but they were selling it for play. Why would you do that? It was very confusing because it didn't feel like the game was anywhere near ready to be sold. If you're getting such an early experience with the game, where you can't even do half the stuff in the game, well, that doesn't seem to make much sense, does it? So for me, I was very, very disappointed with the game. But ultimately, the thing that really got me was what happened at the end of my playthrough, which I'd like to show you right here. Out of nowhere, here's what happened. Phil Burnell has passed away. And as I was playing, we were all trying to figure out what happened. Nothing happened. The game is completely broken, and you just randomly die for no reason. My character wasn't sick. My character wasn't unhealthy. My character was actually fine. There was nothing wrong with my Inzoi or Zoi, whatever they were called. They just died out of nowhere. And I tried reloading and replaying. They would always die no matter what at a certain point with no explanation. So there was actually no way to make my character and have them progress past just a few days. It would be instant death for no reason. So the game was literally unplayable because you couldn't get past a couple of days. So at this point, I was like, I'm just not going to play it anymore. Like, it was an interesting idea. It was an interesting thing to try. But man, this thing just doesn't feel like it's finished. It's obviously busted and there's problems. So I never played it again. And I was wondering, would anyone ever ask me? No one literally ever asked me to go back to the game. And apparently the game ended up being universally panned because things were never finished. Things were broken. And the game developers just essentially botched the whole thing. Which is sad because, like I said, it looked pretty good. The graphics were good. The premise is interesting. But the execution was just incredibly poor. To the point where if the game wasn't actually fully playable, why would you even take money for it? No one basically tested it and they just started selling it. And then it was a big broken mess. So it was an interesting experiment. If there ever is another game like that in the future, I would definitely be interested in checking it out. But sadly, the game was just an unfinished mess. Very disappointing. And so obviously that's why it's in this countdown. Okay. I hope you guys are enjoying the countdown so far. Let's move on to our next installment. So, this next particular game is very interesting for the reasons why it's in this countdown. Allow me to explain. I told you that not every game that was in this countdown was going to be something that I considered a bad game or a game that had issues. In fact, I don't even know if this game has issues. Okay? To be honest. But this game upset me with what happened when I played it. Okay, to be honest, I to this day, I'm still a little upset because I feel like there are certain games that if I choose to play them, I have to now kind of do like research up front to figure out if a game is going to actually be accepted or do well. You're going to understand what I mean when I show you this game. Ladies and gentlemen, the game that I want to have next in my countdown is one that was one of my shortest playthroughs ever, because basically I wasn't allowed to continue. The game that is next is South of Midnight. Okay? So for those who don't know, South of Midnight is a game that was on Game Pass, and it was heavily touted as Xbox Game Studios game. It's going to be an interesting game, and you're going to check it out because it's visual style. As you can see, the colors and everything are kind of almost like a cartoonish, cel-shaded style game. It actually had a soundtrack that was very like southern music. It took place in the bayou, so very like southern United States kind of a deal, Louisiana style stuff. So in that regard, the game actually kind of stood out. All right, and I played this game. This is basically the intro hours of the game that you're seeing right here, the tutorial, trying to learn the gameplay mechanics. And honestly, I actually was enjoying the game. I would compare South of Midnight in the time that I spent in it to a PS2 era game. There's some action combat, there's platforming, there's some puzzles and things to solve. Ultimately, I think where the game was shining for me was that it actually had a unique visual style, and also it had a good music, good soundtrack. But the combat itself was kind of simplistic, the platforming was kind of basic, and like I said, I would compare it to an era of maybe Sly Cooper, or Jak and Daxter, or Ratchet and Clank, like a combination of kind of those games, that era of gaming, all right? That doesn't mean the game is bad at all. That's just what the game was, okay? But here's what happened when I played South of Midnight. Started playing the game, and I started to give my honest opinions on it, if I liked it or not. And the audience, during the entire time that I started playing this game, were screaming at me, "This game is woke. This game is terrible. It's so leftist. It's so liberal. It's woke. It's woke." And I would turn to the audience and be like, how is it woke? Really, can you explain to me how the game is woke? Because I was playing it, and nothing that was going on in the plot was woke at all. If you think that any game that has an African-American person as the protagonist is woke, you're racist. I'm sorry, you just are. Just solely based on the color of someone's skin doesn't mean that a game is woke. The idea of woke, for those who don't know, is originally that people are supposed to be awoken, taken out of their trance, realizing that there's prejudice in the world and being aware of your surroundings, and then basically taking appropriate actions because of that. So people that were in the woke mentality were people who were supposed to say, okay, well, I understand that there's certain groups of people that are considered minorities and they don't get equal treatment with everyone else, so we should give them better opportunities and give them assistance and things like that. That's kind of the essence of the woke movement. But what's happened is now the entire thing has changed, and now everyone says that anything that's woke has to do at all with minorities or anything that even involves someone who's black or someone who's even Middle Eastern and stuff. It's woke now because you have someone who's not white as the protagonist. Okay, that's not true. Sorry, it's just not. Okay, so here I am. I'm playing this game, and I'm enjoying the gameplay mechanics. I'm enjoying the soundtrack. I'm enjoying these things, right? And every time that I keep looking at the chat, it's just, this game's woke. We don't like it. Why are you playing it? And it actually drove me nuts. Like, I'm just trying to enjoy a game on its own merit. Now, very much, maybe the game did actually have woke elements in it, but I certainly didn't even get to them. All right? I was in the tutorial. I was in the first 2 hours of the game. And I couldn't get anyone to engage with this game or even give it a fair shake. People were just so turned off that the main character apparently is woke that I couldn't enjoy it. So after the original stream playing it, I said, listen, this is a game that I was enjoying. I like the platforming elements. I like the exploration. I like the puzzles. I like the combat. I like the music. This is something that I would personally maybe go play, but I guess I just can't stream it, right? Like, I'm not going to stream a game where everyone's going to complain every moment that I play it. So the truth is, all right, I don't know if the game did well or not. From what I'm to understand, it didn't. The game actually, it was a Game Pass game, okay? So it did get some attention for being kind of free on Game Pass or whatever, and some people did play it, right? But it didn't really get most notoriety or whatever. And what's funny is it won the award at the Game Awards for, what was it called? Games for Change or Games for Purpose? What was it? It was basically some kind of a game, one of these awards. And I was like, well, why did it win that award? And I was confused. And people were like, well, they won the award because the protagonist is African American. I said, huh? So again, for the equal reasons that I don't understand why people hated on the game, because the protagonist was African American, I don't understand why the game also won an award because the protagonist is African American. You know what I'm saying? Like, it goes both ways. You shouldn't hate on the game because of that, but you also shouldn't be awarding the game solely on that premise. Was the game good? At this point, I don't even know. I'm so confused. I don't even know. My mind is addled, and I'm like, I don't know. I honestly wish I did play it more, but I'm a streamer who streams things for an audience. I have to play things the audience will show up for and like, and the audience obviously didn't like this. So I was like, well, I guess this is one. I'll take the L, and I guess I'm just not going to play it. But hey, I would say again, if you like games from the PS2 era, and you wanted to play something that was a modern version of that, I feel like it plays like that. I don't know about the story or anything later about it, but I actually was enjoying the game. I was disappointed that my audience basically said, no, we refuse to watch you play this, and I had to basically go on from it and never go back to it. But that's kind of just the thing. When you are a streamer, you have to go with your audience, and sometimes there's games that I like and they don't, and there's just nothing I can really do about it, and it is what it is. Okay? Okay. Moving on. Our next entry in the most disappointing games countdown is another game that sadly I'm pretty disappointed I didn't get to play more of. All right? It's a game that I only played one stream, and I was very much enjoying it, but the audience again all complained and said, we don't like this game. But I want to give it a moment in the sun here because I actually think that it's a good game and that you might enjoy it. The game that we're talking about today is called Cast and Chill, okay? This is very much an indie game, okay, just to make it abundantly clear. The visual style is pixel art, as you can see, and the whole premise of Cast and Chill is very simple. You go out on a boat with your dog, you try to catch fish, and you chill. The whole purpose of the game is basically to relax. Now, as you catch different fish, you'll be able to buy upgrades for your line. You'll be able to get a better boat. You'll be able to unlock new maps. And you'll be able to basically do new things. And the locations will change, and the actual visuals get even more beautiful. And you can do it at different times of day, so you can fish at night or day. Different fish will show up and stuff like that. And personally, I liked it a lot. We were looking at this point for a new relaxing game for my rotation. And I thought, you know, I even dressed up for it. I brought out my fisherman's hat again for the first time in like years to try to drive some hype for it. It just didn't work. People were saying that they were more bored than entertained, even though there was an opportunity for people to hang out with me and talk and interact. Most people said, this is super boring. We're not enjoying this. We just want you to do something else. So after one stream, that was it. But this is a game I just want to let you know it's very cheap. It's only a few bucks. I feel like if you're looking for a relaxation style game, this is it. There may be streamers who can make this work with their audience. Sadly, I wasn't one. You know, I'd played fishing games previous, and that's why I thought maybe it would have worked. But people just found it incredibly boring. This is just a short and sweet one. I think it's a fine game. I was disappointed because it was one that I was liking. It didn't work with the audience, so I had to move on. But Cast and Chill, you might want to give it a look if you're looking for a relaxing game. Okay? Nice, quick, and easy one there. No rage. No problems with that one. All right. The next game on our most disappointing games countdown is one that I think most of you kind of figured would be in the countdown. But I think at one point, we all thought that it was going to be the other countdown. All right? This is a game that I feel was massively overhyped. Was a game that sold solely for one purpose, which isn't a good reason. And a game that suffered from insane amounts of padding. And then had a really, really good point at the end. But you got to ask, what gives with the way that the game rolled out? Let me explain. Ladies and gentlemen, the next game on our disappointing games countdown is Donkey Kong Bonanza on the Switch 2. Okay? So when the Switch 2 released in June of 2025, immediately the question arose, well, what games are we going to get for this thing? Because immediately there was only Mario Kart World and a bunch of ports. So when Donkey Kong Bonanza was released a month later, everyone jumped on it. Oh my God, it's a first-party title. It's apparently you had some of the game devs working on it who actually had worked on Super Mario Odyssey. So all of us who love Super Mario Odyssey was super duper excited for this game to come out. We heard that there were going to be brand new game mechanics. It wouldn't play like Donkey Kong Country, but something completely different. Everything was destructible. You could punch and dig your way through anything in the game, which is going to give a whole new element to the gameplay. It's fully going to utilize the graphical capabilities and the processing power of the Switch 2. This is something that never would have been possible on the Switch 1, right? It all sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, wow. All right. Sounds like the kind of game that I think is going to blow me away. I'm really going to enjoy, and we're all going to have a great time with. And to some extent, that's true. What you're seeing right now is the first hour of the game, where I went to the first room, and I got so hooked on the destruction aspect of the game that I literally, like, destroyed everything in it. Like, I was like, wow, I can't believe that everything actually is destructible. Now, yeah, there's limits to where you can break things in a room, like metal walls that you can see here past all of the dirt. But for the most part, it was pretty insane to see a game where you could just keep digging upwards and keep going up and destroying things. Almost like Bugs Bunny in a Looney Tunes cartoon, digging and popping out of the ground. You can do that in Donkey Kong Bonanza. There's almost limitless amounts of items you're looking for. Whether it's giant golden bananas, pieces of gold that you can use to buy upgrades, whether it's the collectibles, which you could use to do other kinds of upgrades or more. You have a sonar. When you clap, you could see the items through the walls, which is really cool because it helps you to solve the puzzles and figure stuff out where that weird stuff is hidden in the worlds. There's also animal transformations, where you can turn into things like a zebra and run super fast, or you can become an ostrich that can fly, or you can become a snake that does a super jump because you spring up like a coil and bounce like a spring. And all of that sounds great on paper, doesn't it? In fact, I'll admit, when you first run into that stuff in the game, you're blown away. Look at my face. Look at my face. I'm actually genuinely happy there. I'm like, wow, this is so neat. I can't believe it. But there's a problem, all right? And the problem is very simple. That's the whole game. Everything that I just described, destroying things in order to find hidden items and doing a few transformations, is the entirety of Donkey Kong Bonanza. Are there some boss fights? Yes, but they're an afterthought. And a lot of them are kind of buggy and wonky because the Switch 2 can't handle the graphics very well. So during certain boss fights, the frame rate dips and the boss fights become chores because of that. But outside of that, every world in Donkey Kong Bonanza is almost exactly the same. You go into an area, you look around for hidden bananas, use your sonar to find items in the walls, you destroy everything around you to get the items, wash, rinse, and repeat. Now, there are some challenge stages where you're going to be challenged with platforming and stuff like that. The thing is, those challenges are not even representative of the core game. You can skip them all and still turbo through the game, and there's no problem. In fact, I would go as far to say that Donkey Kong Bonanza is insanely easy. It is one of the easier games that you'll probably ever play in the modern day. The game itself lasts about 20 to 30 hours, okay? The first hour is incredibly good. Then when you realize the second or third or fourth world, it's all the same, you're like, oh, well, the substances we're punching are different. It's lava, it's ice, it's sticky goo, it's poison. But you're still just breaking it all just to find items in the walls. And if they never innovate on top of that, what is the interest of the game? And the answer is there is none. Now you might say, well, wait, you just said there were animal transformations. There are. The problem is they're almost never used. Once you get the zebra transformation, you'll use it to go on 1 or 2 platforms, and you'll probably use it in a boss fight, and then you'll never use it again for the entirety of the game. I'm serious. There was one at the end of the game, you get the snake transformation. You, like, never use it for anything besides maybe one room. Like, why is it even in the game then? Why'd they bother putting it in there? It's just not fleshed out. Now, here's the weird part about it, is the final segment of the game. The final 2 hours are absolutely outstanding. If you're a fan of Donkey Kong, if you're a fan of Donkey Kong Country, and you like fan service, the final couple hours of this game are absolutely must play, cannot miss. Now, that's as far as I'm going to go because it basically is like a humongous spoiler if I go any further than that. But my problem with the game is, why on earth, okay, is that the end of the game? Why not make the interesting part of the game the game? Instead of having an interesting first 2 hours and an interesting last 2 hours and 30 hours of filler in between. Did the game makers and developers never hear of the thing called pacing? I'm actually legitimately lost. Like, they didn't understand that you wanted to be entertained in the middle. They thought, oh, once you get into this gameplay loop, you'll just want to do this repetitive gameplay for 30 hours and never complain or want something more of it. And then at the end, you'll be happy because we give you fan service in the finale. No. What they could have done is cut the middle 30 hours out and expanded the final 2 hours into, say, 10 or 15 hours. And this would have been one of the best games of the modern era. Instead, I'm not even kidding you, the villains of this game are completely disposed of by the end of the game as if they never existed, and they never will. They're actually filler. The actual game is filler to itself, if that makes sense. So, here's the truth. This game sold incredibly well. A lot of people say, oh, Game of the Year contender. I don't know why they would have said that, besides the fact that they just don't play good games, and they think that a game where you do the same thing for 30 hours is good. But the reason this game, I feel, did so well is because of artificial scarcity. What does that mean? Well, the Switch 2 had come out, and everyone was looking for games for Switch 2 to play. This was a first-party unique game, so everyone ran out and bought it. So it sold in droves. But if it weren't for artificial scarcity, and if there was actually a wide variety of games to play on Switch 2, and people might have waited to buy this and said, oh, is it actually any good? And then actually got the truth about it. No, it's pretty boring and repetitive and not a very good game. They could have done a lot better. Instead, they just did 30 hours of the same thing. So, yeah, ultimately, when people asked me, you know, what do you think about the Switch 2 lineup for launch year? Very underwhelming. This game particularly was the game that I think I had the most good feelings about, because when you saw the previews, you're like, oh my God, maybe this game actually could be like the next Mario Odyssey. But as soon as you get past the first couple of hours and you see how uninspired, boring, and repetitive it is, you realize Nintendo didn't try. This is a game that they purposefully scheduled to be the second game on Switch 2 so that people would all buy it. They knew everyone would be done with Mario Kart World by the first month, and they would want another game. So they put it into this to be the big one for July that everyone would rush and buy because they wanted something for their Switch 2s. And that's sad. It shouldn't be selling because it's the only console exclusive. It should be selling because it's good. All right. That one does upset me because that one I feel like could have been a lot better. And Donkey Kong deserves better than that game. He really does. But the thing is, so many people are just kind of like happy with it because of the fact that it was an exclusive and Donkey Kong came back and the ending was good. But I'm sorry, I don't buy a game just for the ending. I buy a game to have a good experience throughout. A lot of people even say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. If the journey is piss boring, then I don't care what the ending is. And the ending was great. I'm glad I experienced it. But I didn't want to waste 30 hours of stream time to get there. Okay. Well, I hope that you guys are enjoying. We're already more than halfway through the countdown. I'm just going to keep going because I know this is probably going to take about another 30, 45 minutes to get through because we are more than halfway now. Some of these entries coming up are actually going to be a little bit more quicker, but I hope that you guys are enjoying. I'm not seeing many people trying to interact with me. That's why I'm just going ahead and continuing with the countdown. I did say this would be an interactive stream, but I'm just not getting many people here who are literally like talking to me. So that's why I'm just continuing on. Maybe people are just used to this countdown being the thing that I just do and don't talk to people. I don't know, right? Okay? All right. Continuing on. The next game in my most disappointing games countdown of 2025. This is a short and sweet one, okay? This game was a follow-up to a game that I had previously played a couple years before, but it was sold as a standalone. That's why I'm counting this as a new game. Technically, it's kind of a DLC, but it was sold as a standalone game, okay? This was a game that originally, the original game I liked, although you could tell it didn't have a ginormous budget or whatever, but I felt like they did justice to the intellectual property. The game was fun. It was a good romp. It had, you know, interesting mechanics, and in general, it was a fun filler playthrough. It certainly wasn't anything that I went crazy for, but at the same time, we had a good time. But then we played the follow-up last year, right? And this one, sadly, had a bad fate. Ladies and gentlemen, the next game on the countdown is a game that you may not even know that I play. It is called RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business. What do you mean? Unfinished business? I didn't even know Phil played this. Well, you might not know I played it because I only played 2 parts. And it wasn't because the game was bad, and it wasn't because I wasn't having a good time with it. It was because the game was insanely buggy on PC. To show you what I mean, I'm going to go to the point where basically I couldn't play the game anymore. Well, if I could find it. Basically what happened was I would go to this particular terminal, and this terminal needed to be interacted with so that you could open a door. And there was nothing else you could do in the game. There was no other place to go. There was nothing else you could do. You had to interact with this particular terminal to open a door. So I interacted with the terminal, and every time that I did, my game would literally crash. And I was like, well, that's not good. What am I supposed to do if I can't interact with this particular terminal? In fact, I think this was the first time that this happened here. Maybe not. I don't know. It's weird because this is definitely the part. You could say this is a buggy mess on PC. Game over. But I can't seem to pinpoint the time when it happened. Oh, wait. Here it is. So it says, here's the gates. The gates don't have power, right? So you have to interact with this particular terminal. And when you do it, when you override, and this is a game mechanic that you used a million times in the original game before this standalone DLC was sold, the game would close. And this happened, I think, 2 to 3 times, and there was no way to fix it. So I was like, oh, that's great. So basically, I'm hard locked. And this was a case where, sadly, the game was all right, and it was meant to be like a filler playthrough, but I wasn't going to go back weeks later after they patched it to try to actually play it again. No one really cared. It was supposed to be like a thing that we were just going to do quickly and have fun filling in, you know, empty times between streams. It just sucked. And the worst part about all this, I actually heard on console, this game had no problems. That on console, it played fine. It was only the PC version that actually had this horrible problem and made it unplayable. So I never was able to continue with the game. I still haven't played it again to this day. RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business. You know what? That's the best name you could give the game. Unfinished Business. Because it was literally not able to be finished because the game would crash because of this horrible game bug. Pretty sad, huh? In reality, it's one of the few times that's ever happened to me because, as you know, I only just recently, about a year and a half ago, became a PC gamer. So usually on console, you don't run into these problems, right? Like almost never on console would you run into like a game locking problem like that. And it was very disappointing that that happened. I'm sure by now the game is finished. Like I'm sure they fixed it. But the thing was, I mean, we're not going to go back to it weeks or months later. We were playing it. It was brand new. And when it was brand new, it was unplayable. And then people didn't really care about it anymore. Okay? All right. The next game in our countdown. Good Lord. I can't believe what happened with this one. Okay? A tried and true series, which all of us have grown up loving. It's a staple, an absolute staple in this genre. A game that we were all hyped for when we heard about it was coming out. A game that we were all stoked for. And then this happened. So when you were asking me on the thumbnail for this video, what was the schoolgirl in a Japanese schoolgirl outfit? It was the main character protagonist of Silent Hill F. But the reason that Silent Hill F was a game that massively disappointed me this year wasn't the initial game design, wasn't the fact that the game was set in Japan, wasn't the fact that the game had so many departures from Silent Hill. It was the fact that the game turned the main character into a werewolf who then used combat abilities straight out of Devil May Cry to do combos and special attacks to kill enemies. Something that goes so against the core tenets of what Silent Hill is meant to be, so just forgoes anything that would be scary, that would be survival horror, that I had a hard time swallowing to the point where I just couldn't take the game seriously after this happened in the plot. And it gets worse and worse. For the record, this is initially when the girl transforms, but it actually gets worse where she gets more abilities and transforms further into a werewolf further into the game you go. It's terrible. It's horrible. It's completely off base for what Silent Hill's meant to be. It takes all of the survival horror element out of the game whatsoever. And by the end of the game, all you can do is shake your head like this and say, I can't imagine what they were thinking besides, we want to make Silent Hill a different kind of game to make more money. Because Silent Hill is an incredibly popular and prominent survival horror franchise. But when you turn yourself into a superhuman monster that beats the living crap out of enemies with your pimp hand, it's not scary anymore. In fact, I would argue once she transforms, there's literally nothing scary for the end of the game. Or the rest of the game. Like, how could you be scared? The entire first maybe half of the game isn't that bad. When you're going through the town, it's all being infected by the monsters. You're trying to figure out what is this wave of red, like plants and things that's taking everything over. It is scary. But then once you get to this point, it's like, I just can't take it seriously anymore. In any way, shape, or form. The game is awful. And I just don't understand why people even defended it. There's actually people who are like, oh no, how dare you not like this game? You have a right. I played all the others. This is not Silent Hill. This is exactly what happened to Assassin's Creed. Everyone liked Assassin's Creed because it was a game about assassinations and stealth. Then they turned it into an open world mashing button combat game, and everyone says it sucks. Yeah, it sold maybe because people were looking for an open world RPG, but that doesn't make it good. It just makes it a moneymaker. In this case, Silent Hill was supposed to be a game that was slow-paced, where you have no resources, where enemies can kill you at a moment's notice. It's creepy as hell. You don't know what's around the next corner. It's about survival. It's about inventory management. It's about health being a big problem. In this game, they literally turned it into a button-mashing action game. Why? There's also other problems with the game as well. For example, the puzzles are actually quite cryptic. There's one or two puzzles that, unless you're like a fan of Japanese lore or stuff, you wouldn't even know. There's one puzzle, you actually need to know exactly what a cherry blossom tree or sakura tree looks like. And if you've never seen one before, you can't solve the puzzle. I'm not kidding. Like, you actually need to look it up online or whatever to actually solve the puzzle. And I don't know what they were going for there, because not everyone lives in Japan and has seen a cherry blossom tree. But that's just one example. The main gripe I have with the game is that you turn into a werewolf and you pimp slap the shit out of enemies, and it's not scary at all because of that. It's insanely lame. Fair enough. I think I've made my point on that one. Okay. All right. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here now, folks. In fact, we only have 6 games left. All right. So, let's just take a quick look here and assess, how we're doing. Wow, attendance on the stream is actually quite good. So I hope that you guys are enjoying the countdown so far. And thank you for watching live if you're here live. If you're watching on demand, I would love your feedback on this format, because I've never done it this way before, where I'm kind of going between 2 setups, where I'm doing commentary over the videos with background music. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts, honest thoughts about this. Do you think that this is good or not? And are you enjoying? Or do you think that the previous ways that I did it was better? I want feedback. Please let me know, okay, for sure. I have gotten a $20 tip from an anonymous tipper. Thank you so much to the anonymous tipper. Here we go. And the anonymous tipper says, I'm having some good laughs from this countdown. Thank you so much for doing it. You're welcome. I do it every year. I really enjoy doing this and sharing my thoughts with everyone. I know the format's a little different this year, but I hope that you guys are having a good time. Okay? 6 more games. Let's go. Ready? So, the next game in my most disappointing games countdown of 2025 is Hades 2. And you might say, wait, what? Hades 2 is a great game. Hades 2 actually was Game of the Year contender. Tons of people love Hades 2. How could Hades 2 be one of your most disappointing games of the year? Okay? There's 2 reasons why. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the gameplay of the game. It has nothing whatsoever actually to do with my experience with said game. Okay? There's 2 reasons why I was very disappointed with Hades 2 in 2025. Reason number 1. Hades 2 had an early release in 2024. The game was not yet completed. I was a person who purchased that game early and played the early access. I was having a ton of fun with it, but after streaming it 2 or 3 times, I was told by my audience, hey Phil, hold off. Stop playing Hades 2, because that game's not done. And if you continue to play Hades 2, you're going to see parts of the game that are unfinished. You're going to basically get too far in the game, and then when the real game comes out, it's not going to make sense for you to play it because it's changed or it's different, or you're going to have to start over and no one's going to want to see that. So I was urged by my audience to stop playing Hades 2 in 2024 when it was in early access. Then we were waiting and waiting. When will it actually have its official full release date, right? What I'm disappointed at is the way that they released this game. And what I mean by that is it had absolutely no build-up, no hype. It essentially pretty much almost shadow dropped. It was announced like, what was it, like a week, not even, maybe a week before it was coming out. Hey, it's coming out, full release. Wait, what? To make matters worse, it came out in the midst of the busy fall gaming season. Now, if it had come out in the middle of the summer and nothing else was going on, maybe then it wouldn't have been a big deal. But it came out in the midst of the busiest gaming season of the year. So, of course, people are going to want me to be playing the more higher profile games, the brand new games, over the game I've already played the early access to the year before. So, honestly, it just didn't get hype. So here I am playing it on my stream. I'm enjoying it and having a good time. The audience is disengaged. They're not having a good time. They're saying, we've already seen this. Why are you playing it again? Well, because I played early access. Well, you already played it. What? That's confusing. I feel like this game actually would have done better if it didn't have that crazy early access window like it did. Now, you might very fairly criticize what I just said and be like, but don't you know that Hades 1 had a very wide early access window as well, and it ended up being incredibly successful? Sure. And Hades 1 was a game that was a first entry to the series that no one knew about and wanted to give it a shot and understand what it was. So that early access window made sense. Because no one knew what Hades 1 was or if they were going to like it, testing it early allowed people to get hooked on that gameplay loop and say, man, I can't wait for the full release. In the case of Hades 2, We know what the game is. We know what the gameplay loop will be like. Why do we need to test it a year early? We don't. The early access window actually, in my opinion, made zero sense for it to exist, because by the time the game came out, there was no hype behind it anymore. We already knew what it was. Most people who wanted to play it had already played it. Then they released it during a time when there was insane amounts of competition in the gaming landscape, so it didn't even get the hype that the first game had gotten upon its full release. It really didn't. Like, people played it, but it wasn't like, oh, Hades 2 get hype game of the year. It wasn't really like that vibe at all, anywhere. The people who were big fans of Hades 2 enjoyed it, but I'd be shocked to hear that this game did insane sales numbers or anything like that. So I feel like they did themselves a disservice treating it as if it were the same game a second time, that instead they maybe should have treated it more like a hyped release, a bigger release, because it had a following now. I couldn't sell it to my audience. I tried hard. I was like, guys, no, listen, Hades 2, right? It's a great game. We played it last year. I can't wait to play it. I think I only played 2 or 3 streams of it tops, and then people didn't care and said, please stop playing this. Do anything else. We're bored. So I moved on from it. And it's sad because at this point, I would love to play it, but I can't get interest in it. People outright told me we are never, in fact, since I stopped playing it, no one asked me to go back to it. No one. So yeah, compare that with Hades 1 where, you know, yeah, I did jump in and out of it for a while, but there was an audience that loved it and wanted to see me go back to it. Not Hades 2. So I hope the game did well. I'm sure it sold good based on the laurels, again, of the first game. But I really feel like they did a disservice treating it the way that they did and releasing it the way that they did. That's what was disappointing to me. Okay. All right, folks. We're getting there. We're getting down to the end here. And so, this one, to be honest, some people might be shocked and some people might not be. Ladies and gentlemen, my next most disappointing game of 2025 is a game that I'm still playing, Call of Duty Black Ops 7. That is right. A game that I'm still actively playing, a game that I'm actually having fun with, and a game that I'm streaming on the late stream tonight on this very channel. And you might be like, what? Huh? Black Ops 7? What? I thought, you know, no, you have to understand, I'm fair in this countdown, okay? Black Ops 7 is doing pretty good in my lineup right now. Now that I actually have good equipment and stuff that I'm using, I got surround sound headphones. I've got a great gaming keyboard and mouse, okay? I've got everything set up and I'm doing well in the game. I'm actually getting, you know, good score streaks. And I'm actually getting a positive kill-death ratio. And the audience is entertained, okay? So why is it in my most disappointing list of 2025? Because it fucking sucks. The game is bad. This game is nowhere near as good as previous Call of Duties. They did everything wrong. They took away things that were great, like putting down mines or claymores to stop people from getting behind you. It's been removed from the game. Instead, it's replaced by crappy kill streaks of drones and fucking stupid technology nonsense that's garbage in the game. It's got dumb wall jumping that doesn't belong in Call of Duty. I mean, I could keep going. It's got poor hit detection. The connections are awful. It uses skill-based matchmaking, and it's worse than ever. How is it that in one round, I'm doing absolutely amazing against everyone, getting, you know, mowing them down, getting the drop on them, getting tons of kills. In the next game, I fill someone with lead. They won't die, but then they don't raise their gun and I instantly die. I mean, I could just go on and on about the problems with this game and franchise. But Black Ops 7 is now the new example of how Activision / Treyarch / whoever is responsible for Call of Duty just doesn't care anymore. This game did not try to innovate, did not try to advance the formula. It just plays by paint by numbers, essentially. It has really awful game decisions with the weapons, with the kill streaks. It's just bad. It's genuinely not a good game. I have played so many better Call of Duties in the past. If anything, the one glaring thing about the game that proves it's bad is that it has legacy maps like Raid or Shipwreck. And when you play those maps, you realize, God damn, this game was much better when those maps were in the older games. Like when you played the old Black Ops on Raid, that was a much better experience. Now, you can't even set up to snipe because anytime that you set up to snipe, there's no way to put down a claymore or a mine to stop someone from getting behind you. And constantly people spawn behind you. It's almost impossible in this game to get a kill streak of more than 2 or 3 kills, because anytime you kill one person, 3 more people are coming right around the corner to murder you or are already behind you. That's just not the spirit of Call of Duty. It never has been, but that's what the game has become. They made it just like twitchy shooter for people who are like, you know, chugging fucking caffeine and snorting fucking energy. That's not what it's supposed to be. You can't even really use good strategy to play this game anymore, and that's sad. So even though I'm still actively playing it, even though I'm actually doing well in it, I can call a spade a spade. This game sucks. It should be much better. And in fact, it sucks so bad that Activision came out and admitted we goofed with this game, and next year will not be Black Ops 8. Instead, we're going to start actually making new games again. It's not going to be Modern Warfare, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, then Black Ops 5, then 6, then 7. They're actually going to start making new titles. So that's a good thing. It's about time they're not just going to phone it in, dial it in, and make these kind of half-baked games that aren't even worth playing, you know? The thing is, for me, I like having it in the rotation because it's an adrenaline-fueled multiplayer game. It gives me some variety, you know, and actually I'm getting better at the game as I have better peripherals now. I can play it better. That doesn't mean it's a good game by any means. It's not. I'm not going to lie. The game kind of stinks. I wish it was better. Okay. All right, folks. We're getting down to it. I think we're in top 4 now. Yes. Okay. So the next game in my most disappointing games countdown is here for a very good reason. But again, you guys might be shocked that I have it in the countdown. Okay. As you know, from time to time, game developers will release a throwback or a game that essentially is nostalgia bait, okay? And a franchise that I had asked for many years to have one of these kind of nostalgia collections was Mortal Kombat, because we had these kind of classic collections for Street Fighter before that had Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter Alpha or Street Fighter 3, etc. We just had the Marvel collection. But Mortal Kombat had never really done that before. And I was excited when they announced the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection because it sounded like they were giving the fans exactly what they wanted. A collection that had all the different versions of classic Mortal Kombat in it, all accessible with online multiplayer, and it was going to have this cool mode that kind of you go through the legacy of Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. Sounds good to me. I love Mortal Kombat. I would love to experience these games again and to be able to share them with an audience on YouTube, right? Sounds like a great idea. And I actually did go through this game, playing pretty much all the old school Mortal Kombat, including 1 through 4. And then we actually did some of the horrible games like Mortal Kombat Mythology, Sub-Zero, and stuff like that, okay? So actually this collection made a good amount of great content for me, and I did enjoy covering it. However, you may notice I'm not playing it anymore, and you might wonder why on earth is this not in my, or not in my best games countdown, or why is it in my most disappointing games countdown if I liked it so much and I made good content out of it, right? Well, the answer is very simple. This collection was sold completely unfinished. When they released this collection, it had no actual functioning online multiplayer. What I mean by that is that they did have the ability to play it online against people, and they sold it that way. They said, oh, this collection has online multiplayer. But when you actually went to do it, you found out there was no actual lobby system. There was no actual ranking system. It was just, I want to play this game. Okay, search for a random opponent. It would maybe match you up against someone playing it, but if you couldn't find anyone, the game would then say, well, let's just match you up against anyone playing any of the games in the collection. Huh? So let's say, for example, I wanted to play Mortal Kombat Trilogy, which is what I'm playing right here in this video. Search for an online player. Oh, we couldn't find anyone. Here, play Mortal Kombat 1 instead. But that's a completely different game. Why would I want to play that? That's how this game functioned. So most people who wanted to play it online couldn't find any opponents and ended up playing the wrong game or never played it at all. In addition, the game had no crossplay whatsoever. So think about it. This game was sold on every console, right? Xbox, PlayStation, PC. I think it's even on the Switch too. So if that's the case, you have basically separated your player base into 4 platforms. Makes it even harder to find people to play because people might be playing on a different platform than the one you're playing on. So just the design of the game makes no sense. It's supposed to be a competitive, head-to-head fighter. You need online play. the game didn't have actual good functioning online play or any of the features that you would want in a game that has online play. So why say it had it and sell it like that? They did. They actually outright lied and said it was going to have those features, and then it didn't. When the game released, everyone complained. And the game developer said, well, if it sells enough, we'll add more features. People were like, wait, what? No. You said those features were going to be in it. You have to give them now. So the game developer kind of reluctantly said, all right, we'll do it. And they waited a few weeks and then did like a patch. And then they waited another few weeks. And it was almost 2 months after the fact, in mid-December, they finally put in online lobbies. By then, everyone moved on. No one cared. So now this game is dead. If you try to find people in it, you can't find anyone. This is a collection that just started getting sold in October, and it's already dead. So unless you want to play people offline, do not buy Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. The game is an insane ripoff because they didn't put the effort in to make it a functioning game at launch, and it died within a month. This is just so sad that this keeps happening with these collections. They always release them, and they're half-featured, and they're basically not cross-platform, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's very confusing because it's happened with Street Fighter, and now it's happening with Mortal Kombat. I mean, why do they not put effort in? If they actually wanted to preserve their games for posterity, you would think they would try to have the basic features that would make people want to play these games after a week. But it's like the millionth time this hasn't happened, and it drives me absolutely nuts as someone who grew up playing fighting games in arcades in the 1990s. The fact that we just can't get a good collection of any of these games is incredibly disheartening. Like, I guess no one's going to be able to experience these games like I ever did because the game developers just don't care enough. All right, folks, we're in the top 3. Up next on the countdown is a game that, once again, I can argue is a game from a tried and true game developer. It's a game that you thought on paper would have been good because already there was an iteration of this game that was pretty good. It was a game that you thought, hey, they got a track record, this will be great. And in fact, this is a game that the game developer was already on this list, but now they're making a second appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, the next game on the most disappointing games countdown is The Outer Worlds 2. Why is The Outer Worlds 2 on this countdown? Well, you may not know this, but The Outer Worlds 2 was also made by Obsidian, the same people who made Avowed earlier in the year. And you might say, wait a minute, again? Yes. I'd like you to take a look at The Outer Worlds 2. Does it look familiar at all? The art style, the open world exploration, the environment's kind of looking cartoony and colorful. It kind of looks like something, doesn't it? Yeah, it kind of looks like Avowed, because it is Avowed. It's basically the same exact situation as Avowed, okay? The basic core elements of the gameplay of Outer Worlds 2 are sound. The difference between this game and Avowed is that Avowed plays like Elder Scrolls, and this one plays like Fallout, except without VATS, okay? It's gunplay. That's the difference, but it's still open world, RPG, looter, all that stuff together, okay? But what's the problem with The Outer Worlds 2? Problem number 1 is that it's The Outer Worlds 1 Part 2. It's not really The Outer Worlds 2, meaning it's almost exactly the same game. If you play this game, you're basically playing Outer Worlds 1 again, just with a tweaked plot. It feels exactly the same. I played it for, I think 2 streams, and both times I played it, I was like, I don't even feel like this is a new game. It really feels like it's the same game a second time. Same vibes, same kind of, stuff. The plot's different, and in fact, the plot's worse, which leads me to my second point. Just like in Avowed, if the plot of the game isn't good, then you're not going to get hooked on an open world RPG. The plot of this game is the 2 corporations that were in constant struggle in the first Outer Worlds have merged into one, and there's no more struggle. Now they're just the evil villain trying to take over and control everything in the galaxy. Oh, so the originality and the interest part of the plot, like, do you side with one corporation? Do you side with the other corporation? Do you side with no corporations? That whole thing's been removed. Now it's just corporations are bad. That's just the whole plot of the game. So immediately you took out the cool premise of the first game, and now it's just very cliche, very boring, but the gameplay elements are almost identical. and it just ends up being a complete waste of your time. Again, after 2 streams, I was incredibly bored. I just wasn't enjoying myself whatsoever playing it, to the point where I was like, I don't see a reason to continue. The audience is bored. I'm bored. Much like with Avowed, if the story isn't hooking you, why do you want to play an open world RPG? The answer is you don't. So what I think the point I'm making here is with Obsidian, this year what they showed is that they're very good with making open world exploration. They're very good with kind of world design and those kind of open world exploration gameplay elements. But that's all they're good at. They just can't write a story to save their life. They don't employ people who are good writers who have any ideas that are interesting. So because of that, you're going to be bored if you play a game like Outer Worlds 2 or a game like Avowed or whatever Obsidian's cooking next. You're probably going to be bored with it unless all you care about is wandering around the world and exploring. So if that's what you're in for, if that's what you get Game Pass and play these games, but I can't recommend them for anyone who's trying to get into the story or make a riveting experience for a stream audience. It just doesn't exist. The games are boring as dirt, and Obsidian has lost their way. Compare that to the days of Fallout New Vegas, where it had one of the most interesting stories I've ever experienced in a video game. This ain't it anymore. Those people probably moved on from the company quite a long time ago, and the people left behind are the B team, the C team, the D team, and it ain't worth your time if you're a fan of good narrative. All right. That one was short and sweet. Up next on the countdown. Next to last. This one hurt me. All right? Seriously. This one hurt me bad. And the reason that this one hurt me bad is because this is a franchise that I was very much looking forward to playing again. This is a character that I think is a classic, one of the greats. And basically, everyone was hyped for this game for a very similar reason to another game in this countdown that we already talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, up next on my most disappointing games countdown for 2025, my second most disappointing game of the year, in fact, is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. You might say, why is this in Phil's countdown? Why was this game so disappointing for Phil? All right. The moment you start playing Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, you realize something. This doesn't really feel like Metroid or Metroid Prime at all. You land on a planet, and during that sequence, there's already a giant fight going on between what appear to be almost space marines and aliens. So there's a big fight war going on. You're like, what is this, Halo? Like, what am I jumping into? Within an hour or two of playing, the characters are talking. You've got one of the characters that blabs all the time, seemingly for comic relief. And you're like, this doesn't feel at all like the spirit of what Metroid is supposed to be. Then you go to the first and second dungeons, and you realize these dungeons all look very samey. They don't have much life to them. They don't seem very interesting. Then you get into the combat, and the combat is very basic. Just lock on and dodge and shoot. Lock on and dodge and shoot. Then eventually there's a scan mechanic. Don't get me started on the scan mechanic. Literally, you have to scan everything in every environment on every screen in order to solve any puzzle, open any door, do anything. So 90% of the time, you just have the scanning visor on and you're just looking at items. Oh, something's happening? Close the scanning visor and just try to lock on and shoot wildly. Wash, rinse, and repeat. That's Metroid Prime 4 Beyond in a nutshell, at least the first 4 or 5 hours of it, because that's what I experienced, and I was insanely bored. It was just so weird because when you start booting up Metroid Prime 1 and you land on that world, right? Immediately you're greeted with something very Metroid-like. You're in an unknown place. You don't know what's going on. You're there isolated, so you get that feeling of loneliness, and you're there by yourself, and you have to survive, and all the odds are against you. You're immediately presented with, like, otherworldly creatures that are trying to kill you. You go one way, and it looks like a lava cave. You go another way, and it looks like a jungle. You go another way, and it looks like a technological room, but it's blocked. You can't go there yet. Very Metroid-esque, right? None of that is present in Metroid Prime 4. It's as if the people who got this game were given all the assets to Metroid, but had never actually played Metroid to know what makes it interesting. So the game doesn't feel like Metroid, doesn't really play like Metroid. It's incredibly repetitive and boring. The first major boss fight has you fighting a guy in a suit and you're like, oh, is this like an evil Samus or something? The guy literally puts out his arms and starts spinning like a top, comedically like you're playing Mega Man. And the only way to stop him is to go into ball mode and drop your little grenades. It's laughably bad. Like, what the hell? This is the boss? This is actually like a major fight in the game? Here it is. This is the first major boss fight of the game. What the fuck is this? This is Metroid now, apparently. I mean, I played Metroid Prime 1. Not once did I ever see something this stupid in my life. Okay? So, after playing it for about 4 hours, I literally said to my audience, guys, you having any fun? I'm not. And the thing is, I was waiting for this game. It was a Switch 2 exclusive, right? We wanted something fresh and new for the Switch 2, because after Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, there really was nothing else going on but Pokemon. And I said, hey, excuse me, let's check it out. Sounds great. I can't wait. We've been waiting how many years for Metroid Prime to come back? And the game comes out, and it's just laughably bad. Like, what happened here? And the weird part about this, too, is that I thought for sure this game would have got a lot of praise, would have got a lot of hype. No. When the game came out, people talked about it for about a day. I haven't seen anyone mention it again. I think everyone kind of knows the game is bad, but doesn't really want to talk about it because we're all so sad that this is what has become of Metroid, that we don't want to believe that this might be the future for the series, right? Like, we want to think that maybe there's something better coming, and this was just a bad situation or something. But man, let me tell you, this has just been an incredible disappointment of a year for Nintendo with the Switch 2. Almost all of the games that are Switch 2 exclusives have been humongous letdowns compared to what we're used to for first-party publishing. And I just don't know what happened over there. Like, this is the first time I think I've experienced actual legit, underwhelming, bad first-party games from Nintendo. I mean, you can argue that maybe not everyone's in love with each one of them, but like Switch 1, even Switch 1 had Super Mario Odyssey, it had Breath of the Wild. What are we playing right now on Switch 2 that's like a system seller, honestly? And the thing is, there's so few first-party titles on Switch 2 that, like, you figure people are buying them just because they want a game on Switch 2. Did you realize that these games are cross-platform? Right? You probably didn't know that most of the games are cross-platform anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Like, yeah, Mario Kart World isn't or whatever, but like a lot of these, this one is. This is on Switch 1, right? So you don't even need a Switch 2 to play it, and it's bad. Anyway. Pretty bad. Very disappointing. One underwhelming year, but we're not even to the worst. We're about to get to the worst right now, folks. We really are. But before I show you that, I have a couple quick shout-outs to do. I want to say thank you to Trials95, who did a $2 super chat and said, new format is great. That your takes on Donkey Kong and Assassin's Creed are all factual. Thank you. I appreciate that. Trials. And I just got a gifted membership from a name that I'm not going to say out loud, but I'll abbreviate his name on the leaderboard. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the gifted membership. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fun 90 minutes, but it's time to wrap this up. I knew this was going to take a long time because I had so many games in the countdown. Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, for me, the most disappointing game of 2025, to no surprise to anyone, I don't think anyone was going to be like, oh, I can't believe that this is his most disappointing game. The game that's most disappointing for me was Mario Kart World. And you might say, all right, why? Phil, spill the beans. What's so bad about Mario Kart World? Is it the visuals? No, the visuals are great. I think it's actually the best looking game I played on Switch 2 all year, honestly. Is it the controls? No. I think the controls are great. Very responsive game. I actually played it just on the Joy-Cons. And I think that the game actually played very well. And I actually had a good time. Of course, now I'm having problems with the controls. As soon as I say that in the video clip, I have problems with the controls. Let's fast forward, okay? So, what actually is the problem, in my opinion, with Mario Kart World? All right? There's two problems with Mario Kart World. One has to do with offline play, and one has to do with online play. Let's start with the offline play, okay? Mario Kart World is the most expensive Mario Kart game ever, being sold at, I think it's $79.99 if I'm correct. It might be $69, but isn't it $79.99? And Nintendo justified this incredibly inflated price tag stating, oh, it's totally worth that. 100%. Why? Because it has an open world now. Mario Kart World is just that, an open world. That's why we're calling it that. And in this open world, you're going to have all this content. You're going to have these challenges to do. You're going to have interactions with characters. There's going to be collectibles and fun things to do. It's a hub that you're going to drive around and you're going to see other players in. So it's totally going to be worth your time. None of that is true. Like, everything I just stated is actually a complete lie. Mario Kart World does have an open world. It's empty. If you drive around the world, you'll find there's almost nothing to do. There are challenges like the one you just saw. Did you see how long it took me to complete that challenge? What was that, 20 seconds? And there's challenges like that all over the world. There are also collectibles and things in the game, okay? So why would you want to do these challenges or collect these collectibles? To get stickers. What are stickers? What do you need them for? You don't. They have no purpose whatsoever. They don't do anything. They don't grant you abilities. They don't unlock content, like they don't unlock characters. They don't unlock vehicles at all. Literally, the stickers are just for show to put on your cart. They don't do anything, supposedly. Like, they have no purpose in the game. So then why do you need to ever do the open world? You don't. Huh? Yeah, I'm serious. As you go around the open world, you start to realize there's literally no reason for you to ever play it. It serves no purpose. It's devoid of any kind of meaning, and it was put in there to just say, hey, guess what? It's there. Yeah, that's fine, but it's called quality over quantity. I understand that there is an open world in Mario Kart World, but you didn't give us a reason to do it. There's no story. There's no unlocks. Like, for example, if you played through the open world and every 10 challenges you unlocked a new character or a new cart or a new customization, then it would be worth it. That doesn't exist. There's no reason to ever boot this up. So I just don't understand what Nintendo was going for besides a bait and switch effort. Basically what they did is they promised everyone, hey, you're going to really get value out of the money you pay for this game because there's an open world now. Most people never use this open world for anything. It's a waste. They just, between matches, they just sit still. They don't even drive around. There's no point. So then why does it exist? No reason besides to make more money for Nintendo and charge you more money. It's that simple. It's the only reason that the open world is in the game. Okay? Now, what about the other reason that I don't like the game? The online play. Well, I'm not even going to show you the online play because there's no point. That's the majority of what I play. But in a nutshell, Mario Kart World is, in my opinion, the worst Mario Kart game ever made when it comes to competitive play because the game isn't based on driving skill. It isn't based on track knowledge. It isn't based on anything that would be based off of like time investment. It's based on abusing items. The entirety of this game is based on getting a good item, banking it, and using it at the right time to blow by 10 to 15 opponents and get into the top 5, and then find one more item and blow into first place, and you win. There's so many times that I played this game and I was driving very well and I was in top 3, and I was punished for it. Because someone would... It sounds like the music doesn't like the game much either. The music really hates Mario Kart World. Holy shit. The music is having like an aneurysm or something. Let's go to the next track. So, yeah. The online play, essentially, is not good for people who want to learn how to play the game or drive well. You get punished for it. If you drive well, people frequently just get an overpowered item and just beat the crap out of you, even though you're in first. They overtake you. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's rage-inducing, and it basically means you don't ever need to learn how to play Mario Kart World. You could just learn a way to bank and abuse items. And that's how most people have played it. The game lost tons of its player base, and most people have stopped playing it entirely. It's just basically an overglorified party game. While previous Mario Karts actually had reasons to play and get better, this one has none. There's no actual formal ranking system. You earn points for driving. The points award you nothing. Basically, just by playing the game enough, you'll unlock all the content. And that's it. But you don't need to be good. You never actually need to win a race. So the game is completely worthless. You play it for a few hours. You can beat all of the tracks within, say, 3 hours, and you've seen the entirety of the game. You go to the open world, there's no reason to play it. It's boring and empty and has no meaning. You go to the online play and you realize everyone just cheats with items, and the skill of driving isn't even worth it. So why are you playing Mario Kart World? And the answer is you shouldn't be. It's actually one of the most big rip-off games I've ever seen in the 17 years that I covered gaming on YouTube. I don't think that it should be sold for $20. I don't even think there's $20 of content in this game. Being honest. It's one of the biggest rip-offs Nintendo has ever sold. It was a blatant bait and switch. They lied to the consumer. They should be held accountable for it. Why aren't they being held accountable? Because they're Nintendo. Because this was the launch title. A month after this was Donkey Kong Bonanza. A couple months after this was Pokemon. Then there was Metroid. Because they create artificial scarcity with games, basically, everyone just buys the next one and moves on from the one that sucked and pretends like it never happened. This has already happened like 3 times this year. Are people up in arms about the Switch 2? No. Nintendo just gets away with it. So this year, if you take a look at my most disappointing games countdown, this game literally is the worst, but a ton of these games were Nintendo games. In fact, I would argue that the Switch 2 is one of the most disappointing console launches I've ever seen in my life. Most of the games on there are cross-platform anyway. There's no reason to own the console right now. There literally is no system sellers on Switch 2 that you must own on that console. To be honest, you can play most of the games on Switch 1, and right now, besides Pokemon, I don't know what I'm going to be playing on Switch 2 in the foreseeable future because there's nothing coming out in 2026. Did you actually look at the game release library for this thing? Almost nothing. Nothing of any note. There's no Mario game. There's no Zelda game. There's like nothing coming out for this thing. So why did we all buy it? Because we're suckers. You know, we're fanboys. And we think, oh, Nintendo's great and they're going to do us right. They certainly have it in 2025. And 2026 ain't looking much better, at least from the lineup that I've seen. So Mario Kart World, hands down, one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. An insane ripoff. Definitely the most disappointing game of 2025. Notably, the reason why it's such a letdown for me, I love Mario Kart, and I was waiting for a new one for the longest time. But remember what they did with Mario Kart 8? They released it, then they re-released it, then they DLC'd the living hell out of it. So you waited so long for a new Mario Kart. And when people ask me, what's the first game you want to see on Switch 2? I said, Mario Kart. Let's get a new Mario Kart because we've been waiting so long. And then we got this turd. A game that I'm never going to play. Ever again. Because there's no point. Absolutely sad. Absolutely embarrassing for Nintendo, quite frankly. But again, Nintendo endlessly gets away with it for whatever reason. I don't understand why. I just don't get why Nintendo gets infinite chances to mess up and never gets called out for it and never pays for it. People will just run and clamor to buy the next Switch 2 game. If Switch 2 comes out with a new version of the console, people will run and buy it in droves. I just don't understand. I don't get it, but hey, I'm going to be honest with you guys about the games that I play. That game was not good. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my most disappointing games countdown for 2025. I hope that you enjoyed it. I would love feedback. Seems like people in the chat were 50-50. Some people like the new format. Some people were like, this format ain't for me. If you watch this on demand, what did you think? Do you agree with my takes? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Please engage with the content. If you liked the video, please give it a like. Let me know what you think because I got some more series coming up in a week or two here, and I'd like to get feedback, okay? So everyone, thank you so much for watching the most disappointing games countdown of 2025. More like this coming. See you soon for more awesome gameplay here on DSP Gaming in 2026. Peace out, everybody.